Part 2, Chapter 9 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 2, Chapter 9. "You will not deny, I am sure," said Gavrila Ardalionovitch, turning to Burdovsky, who sat looking at him with wide open eyes, perplexed and astonished. "You will not deny, seriously, that you were born just 2 years after your mother's legal marriage to Mr. Burdovsky, your father. Nothing would be easier than to prove the date of your birth from well-known facts. We can only look on Mr. Keller's version as a work of imagination, and one, moreover, extremely offensive both to you and your mother. Of course, he distorted the truth in order to strengthen your claim and to serve your interests. Mr. Keller said that he previously consulted you about this article in the paper, but did not read it to you as a whole. Certainly he could not have read that passage." "As a matter of fact, I did not read it," interrupted the boxer, "but its contents had been given me on unimpeachable authority, and I—" "Excuse me, Mr. Keller," interposed Gavrila Ardalionovitch. "Allow me to speak. I assure you your article shall be mentioned in its proper place, and then you can explain everything, but for the moment I would rather not anticipate. Quite accidentally, with the help of my sister, Varvara Ardalionovna Ptitsin, I obtained from one of her intimate friends, Madame Zhubkov, a letter written to her 25 years ago by Nicolai Andreevitch Pavlicheff, then abroad. After getting into communication with this lady, I went by her advice to Timofey Fedorovitch Vyazovkin, a retired colonel, and one of Pavlicheff's oldest friends. He gave me 2 more letters written by the latter when he was still in foreign parts. These 3 documents, their dates, and the facts mentioned in them, prove in the most undeniable manner that 18 months before your birth Nicolai Andreevitch went abroad, where he remained for 3 consecutive years. Your mother, as you are well aware, has never been out of Russia. It is too late to read the letters now. I am content to state the fact. But if you desire it, come to me tomorrow morning, bring witnesses and writing experts with you, and I will prove the absolute truth of my story. From that moment the question will be decided." These words caused a sensation among the listeners, and there was a general movement of relief. Burdovsky got up abruptly. "If that is true," said he, "I have been deceived, grossly deceived, but not by Tchebarov, and for a long time past, a long time. I do not wish for experts, not I, nor to go to see you. I believe you, I give it up. But I refuse the 10,000 roubles. Goodbye." "Wait 5 minutes more, Mr. Burdovsky," said Gavrila Ardalionovitch pleasantly. "I have more to say. Some rather curious and important facts have come to light, and it is absolutely necessary, in my opinion, that you should hear them. You will not regret, I fancy, to have the whole matter thoroughly cleared up." Burdovsky silently resumed his seat, and bent his head as though in profound thought. His friend, Lebedeff's nephew, who had risen to accompany him, also sat down again. He seemed much disappointed, though as self-confident as ever. Hippolyte looked dejected and sulky, as well as surprised. He had just been attacked by a violent fit of coughing, so that his handkerchief was stained with blood. The boxer looked thoroughly frightened. "Oh, Antip," cried he in a miserable voice, "I did say to you the other day, The day before yesterday, that perhaps you were not really Pavlicheff's son." There were sounds of half-smothered laughter at this. "Now, that is a valuable piece of information, Mr. Keller," replied Gania. "However that may be, I have private information which convinces me that Mr. Burdovsky, though doubtless aware of the date of his birth, knew nothing at all about Pavlicheff's sojourn abroad. Indeed, he passed the greater part of his life out of Russia, returning at intervals for short visits. The journey in question is in itself too unimportant for his friends to recollect it after more than 20 years, and of course Mr. Burdovsky could have known nothing about it, for he was not born. As the event has proved, it was not impossible to find evidence of his absence, though I must confess that chance has helped me in a quest which might very well have come to nothing. It was really almost impossible for Burdovsky or Tchebaroff to discover these facts, even if it had entered their heads to try. Naturally, they never dreamt—" Here the voice of Hippolyte suddenly intervened. "Allow me, Mr. Ivolgin," he said irritably. "What is the good of all this rigmarole? Pardon me. All is now clear, and we acknowledge the truth of your main point. Why go into these tedious details? You wish perhaps to boast of the cleverness of your investigation, to cry up your talents as detective. Or perhaps your intention is to excuse Burdovsky by proving that he took up the matter in ignorance. Well, I consider that extremely impudent on your part. You ought to know that Burdovsky has no need of being excused or justified by you or anyone else. It is an insult. The affair is quite painful enough for him without that. Will nothing make you understand?" "Enough, enough, Mr. Terentieff," interrupted Gania. "Don't excite yourself. You seem very ill, and I am sorry for that. I am almost done, but there are a few facts to which I must briefly refer, as I am convinced that they ought to be clearly explained once for all." A movement of impatience was noticed in his audience as he resumed. "I merely wish to state, for the information of all concerned, that the reason for Mr. Pavlicheff's interest in your mother, Mr. Burdovsky, was simply that she was the sister of a serf girl with whom he was deeply in love in his youth, and whom most certainly he would have married but for her sudden death. I have proofs that this circumstance is almost, if not quite, forgotten. I may add that when your mother was about 10 years old, Pavlicheff took her under his care, gave her a good education, and later a considerable dowry. His relations were alarmed, and feared he might go so far as to marry her, but she gave her hand to a young land surveyor named Burdovsky when she reached the age of 20. I can even say definitely that it was a marriage of affection. After his wedding, your father gave up his occupation as land surveyor, and with his wife's dowry of 15,000 roubles went in for commercial speculations. As he had had no experience, he was cheated on all sides, and took to drink in order to forget his troubles. He shortened his life by his excesses, and 8 years after his marriage he died. Your mother says herself that she was left in the direst poverty, and would have died of starvation had it not been for Pavlicheff, who generously allowed her a yearly pension of 600 roubles. Many people recall his extreme fondness for you as a little boy. Your mother confirms this, and agrees with others in thinking that he loved you the more because you were a sickly child, stammering in your speech and almost deformed. For it is known that all his life Nicolai Andreevitch had a partiality for unfortunates of every kind, especially children. In my opinion, this is most important. I may add that I discovered yet another fact, The last on which I employed